Welcome to CALM, Cash and Liability Mastery. And today we're going to talk about money dynamics. I think about money dynamics as laws, like the law of gravity. And there's some critical concepts like time, return, and consistency of investing that work just like these laws when it comes to building wealth. So if you can understand the basic laws, you may not understand gravity, but you understand how gravity works. You don't have to understand everything about money, but you want to understand how these laws work to create wealth for you over time. Now, compound interest is something that Albert Einstein said was the eighth wonder of the world. And it's different than simple interest. With simple interest, if I invest something like $100 and it earns $5 over the course of a year, the next year I'd earn another $5, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. After 5 years, I'd have $125. That's different than compound interest, where compound interest, I earn $5 in the first year, so in 1 year they're the same. But in the next year, I earned not only the interest on my original investment, but I earn interest on that interest. And that is important because while it may not seem like a whole lot, it is the critical component around wealth creation, especially when you look at time, return, and consistency. So let's look at compound interest in a very practical concept. If I were to say to you that, let's say you'd like to be a millionaire by the time that you retire, what would I need to do to become a millionaire? And the answer is, well, it depends. And what does it depend on? It would depend on your ability and willingness to start investing and saving money over time. Now, earlier we said you'll have about a 45-year career. So if you had a 45-year career and you wanted to save $1 million, that seems like a lot of money. Again, if you thought about it, you'd say, wait a minute, if my estimated earnings over 45 years is going to be, say, $3 million, I'd have to save a third. I'd have to save a third of my earnings to have $1 million. And that's true if you were saving cash. But if you're saving money on a consistent basis and that money is earning a return, you get to benefit from compound interest. So just a staggering concept, $100 a month does not seem like a lot of money, and it really isn't for most Americans. If you worked a 45-year career, $100 a month is $1,200 a year times 45 years. That's $54,100. As a percentage of your income, if you were to earn $3 million over your lifetime, you only needed to save $54,000 to be a millionaire if you could earn, say, 10 or 11% interest over that lifetime of saving. So that $100 a month, remember we said there are a couple of key laws we want to understand. The time, and we also want to understand this thing called return. And what I think is the third law is discipline. Because I tell anyone, you can be very wealthy if you have discipline. Most people think wealth comes from a lot of money. But just putting a little bit of money away on a consistent basis over time allows the compounding to work. Now, historically, we tend to earn between 8 and 10% a year in a traditional stock market. There are years that are higher, and there are going to be years that are lower. And for simplicity, let's just say that you're earning this inside of a 401k or an IRA. So $100 a month at 5% will grow to $200,000 over your career. That's still pretty exciting. That's almost $250,000. At 7%, that $100 a month over your career would grow to $386,000. At 9%, that $100 a month grows to $760,000. And at 11%, that $100 a month grows to $1.5 million. So if you had an average return over your investing career, let's just say between 9 and 10%, you're on track to have over $1 million saved. And it's not a third of your earnings, it's $54,000 over your entire career, or just $100 a month. And if you were worried about returns, You could always increase that savings at $200 a month over a 45-year career. That same 11% becomes $3 million. So again, I haven't earned any more money. Let's say over my career, I thought I would earn $3 million in total earnings over my 45-year career. I just simply saved $200 a month or $108,000. Think about that. Do the math yourself. What is $108,000 divided by the amount that you think you would make over your career? So if you thought you'd make $108,000, or if you thought you would invest $108,000, and you thought you would make $3 million, you're only investing about 3% of your earnings over your lifetime to have the same $3 million that you earned available for your retirement or for whatever you'd like to do when you decide not to work as much as you're working today. If I only earn 9% over that time period, I still have $1.5 million. Or only 7%, around $750,000. But the key here is getting that compounding to work for you over time. And that discipline of being consistent. There's a rule we call the Rule of 72. And the Rule of 72 is a pretty powerful rule. It works for you and against you. And I'll talk more about that in the future. But when you're saving money, the Rule of 72 works for you. When you're borrowing money, the Rule of 72 works against you. So what is the Rule of 72? It says that if you take 72, the number, and divide it by the return that you're earning, this is how long it'll take for your investment to double. So in other words, if I take 72 and I divide it by 10%, which is my expected return, say on my retirement plan over 45 years, 72 divided by 10 is 7.2. That means that the money that I invest and save will double every 7.2 years at 10%. If I could earn 20%, that'd be tough, unlikely, but I could double every 3.6 years. If I only earned 4%, it would take 18 years for my money to double. So this is important. Over a 45-year career, you'll have about 6 to 7 doubles. Meaning if you earned an average of 10% and your money's doubling every 7 years and you work for 45 years, well, 6 times 7 is 42, right? So you've got 6 to maybe 7 doubles over your career of work. If you borrow money, it's working against you because when we borrow money, say on credit cards, that's often at closer to 20%. That means your cost of what you borrow doubles every 3.6 years. If you borrowed $10,000 on a credit card at 20%, you would owe $20,000 in just 3.6 years. If you could borrow that money at 1%, that $10,000, it would take 72 years for you to owe $20,000. So it works for you or against you, whether you're borrowing or whether you're saving. This is why they say the first million is the easiest. And you may think, gosh, you may be listening to this at 14 or 24 years old and go, I have got a lot of time. This compounding can work for me. I may be older and I don't have the time, but your kids do and their kids do. That's why financial education is so important, because if you're able to leave them money that they can use to begin compounding earlier in their lives, their subsequent doubles become incredibly meaningful. Now, if you look at the first million, there's different ways to get it. You can get more risk involved, and that is higher returns, or you can invest more money. If I invest $1,000 a month at 8%, I'll have $1 million in 25 years. At 10%, at 22 years. So you'll notice there's not a huge difference here in the early stages of growth. If I have $250 a month that I can invest at 8%, it'll take me most of my career, about 41 years, to get the first million. But watch what happens with the second million. If I keep investing at $250 a month, the second million comes in just 8.5 years. Why is that? Well, the $250 a month is being added to my investment, but more importantly, that initial $1 million is also growing and compounding. And the third million comes in just 5 years. So you can see over time, again, this time and consistency and discipline are critical to building wealth. One of my favorite examples is this little example of Billy, Susan, and Kim. You see, they understood the time value of money. At least Billy did. Susan got it, and Kim got it later. But there's a cost in waiting. You see, Billy was very, very aggressive. As a young man, he delivered newspapers and he mowed lawns. And he was able to save $3,000 a year out of his work until the age he was 19. He then went off to college and at that point had $15,000 invested. Billy never invested another penny in his life because by age 19, that $15,000 had already grown to $20,000 and it continued to compound and grow at 10% a year to $1.615 million. Susan heard about what Billy was doing, and after graduating from college, she started saving $3,000 a year. She did that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So after 8 years, at $3,000 a year, she had about $37,000 saved. Susan stopped saving at that point, but that money continued to grow and compound and grew to $1.5 million. Now Kim, the third child, she heard about what Billy and Susan were doing, and she started at age 27 and saved $3,000 a month for the rest of her life. At age 65, she retired with $1.3 million in savings. So this is the importance of time, value, and compounding. And again, if you don't have the time, your kids have it and their kids have it. So be consistent. Missing one $3,000 payment would have reduced Billy's earnings by $444,000. Meaning if he had just missed that first payment here or here, he would have reduced this to around $1.2 billion. So starting early and being consistent is critical. Now the last point I want to make is this compounding, the last double. Why would it be important to you to just, even if you had an extra $100,000 that you could leave to your children or to contribute into an investment, to start the process? How does that make a difference? Well, remember we said that 72 divided by 10% is 7.2 years. That's how long it takes for a double. So if you were to start right out of college and you had $100,000, let's say you came out of high school or college and you had an inheritance from an aunt. She left you $100,000 and you never invested another penny. You just invested that $100,000 and let it grow. In 7 years, at age 27, there's $200,000. At age 34, $400,000. Age 41, $800,000. And these are just rounded down for simplicity. At 48, $1.6. At 55, $3.2. And at 62, $6.4. It's almost hard to believe, right? That money could compound and grow that quickly. But that last double is so important. And I want to point this out. If you started with $100,000, notice the difference. In 7 years, you're at $200,000. At 14, $400,000. By year 42, let's just say close to the end of the career, that $100,000 growing at 10% a year would grow to $6.4 million. Now, what's the difference here? That's starting with $100,000. See, if I start here at year 0 with 0, and over 7 years I save $100,000, and I never invest again, in 14 years that would grow to 200, etc., etc. But you'll notice now I'll be 49 years old before that money has grown and compounded to that level. So starting with anything at the beginning, the ability to front load that investment has a huge impact on what we'll call the last double. So either starting early or being able to load some additional money into the beginning allows that compounding to happen even faster. So in our next session, we'll talk a little bit about debt and borrowing and how that plays a part of this money dynamic game.